thanks for coming back. This is My Life. The program continues with Ed Hunwick, who's been a kind host for us here today. And we hope you'll enjoy hearing more about his life. He covers a lot of ground, and he's a local person who's done a lot for our community. So while you moved out here 30-some years ago, but at that time you and your bride are still working.
Oh, yeah.
What were you doing?
Oh, my wife wasn't working yet.
Okay, what were you doing then?
At the time we moved out here?
What were you doing at the time you moved out here?
I was self-employed previous to right when we moved here.
Yep.
And then the company who I was purchasing most of my supply from offered me a job to come work for them directly. It was a substantial pay cut from what I was doing as a business owner, but it took away a lot of stress and grief and aggravation, and I sold the business, so I was able to get some capital out of there. You know, we were able to build a house and all that. So I went to work for the supplier. I was in the commercial baking industry, baking distribution. We were distributing bakery products to all the major retailers throughout the metropolitan Detroit area. So I was in that business when we came out here. My wife was still finishing up at Walsh College. She went back to school 3 or 4 years prior to us moving out here. So when we did move in, she had just graduated from Walsh and she was out looking for a job. And she ended up becoming employed with Grant Thornton, which was an auditing firm, global auditing firm. But she got a job there and she retired from there after 30-some years.
Outstanding.
As a partner. So she did extremely well. And
I'm guessing she worked extremely hard.
Oh, yeah, yeah. She worked a lot of long hours when she started. When she was going to school, I was working a ton of hours. I'd come home from work, and the kids needed to be taken care of. And it was really tough on both of us because she's trying to get as much schooling in as possible and getting it done and over with. Yeah. I'd come home and I kept saying, there's payback for me here somewhere. I don't know where it is, but there's payback. And payback came for her career path after she became partner and all that. It was all worth it. But
it's a lot of work.
We struggled a little bit when she was going to school. But when we got out here and she landed her job, things relaxed substantially, but she still worked a ton of hours. I was working a ton of hours, she was working a ton of hours, but we got through it.
So for families who are more starting than in the middle, if they have to look at a job working a ton of hours, what would you say to them? Was it worth it for the two of you to go through the hard work of doing that?
I would say you need to make sure you can balance at least a good portion of your private life versus the work life. You need to take care of your kids. Yeah. You need to make sure your kids are taken care of. Where my wife and I, and that's not the case for a lot of kids, my wife and I, is that my mother was very insistent on babysitting because these were her first 2 grandkids. Yeah. I told my mom, I said, Mom, you raised 5 kids. I'm not going to have you babysit. And she took offense to that. My dad, I remember him calling me, he goes, is it your mission in life to make my life miserable? Your mom wants to babysit. Let her babysit.
Let her babysit.
I can't pay my mom because she's not going to take any money. So my wife and I were very fortunate there. And a lot of people aren't going to have that opportunity to have that, mom and dad right there. Yeah. So I'm not sure what I could tell a young couple today or somebody who's in the middle part of their career. Hard work is, definitely pays off financially down the road, but how does it affect your kids? That's a different story. And you got to make sure you're there for your kids. Yeah. I had a position where if I needed to leave work, I left work, and, for my wife in the early part of her career, it wasn't the case, but and we didn't have mom and dad out here. Yeah. At least we had them in St. Clair Shores. But we made sure we took care of what we had to take care of. Once we got home, we had to make sure we were involved with the kids, with the schooling, with their extracurricular activities. We encouraged that with the kids. They were highly involved with stuff. Our youngest one, Christina, was in the marching band, and that was a great experience for my wife and I to go through. Our oldest daughter was on the high school softball team, and she was on the basketball team. Mm-hmm. So they were involved, and not to mention academically, they both did really well. Andrea was a finalist for the Oxford Cup, and they just. We were fortunate that our children were able to adapt, and we provided them with a sufficient amount of guidance, but they were able to take the reins and go forward with it. And they've both done extremely well, and they're both independent, but they enjoy their family.
They do. And I'm guessing you enjoy their family too.
Oh, the grandkids. Yeah,
Yes.
I love the grandkids. That's the... when my youngest one had our first grandchild, Kenzie, 7 years ago, I was retired, and I told her, I said, here's the list. I'm not doing this. I wasn't going to be this automatic babysitter, because Christina was, they were living in Berkeley at the time. Mm-hmm. And I think it was probably the second time I held her in my arms, I just tore the list up. I said, that's it, It's
funny how that works.
I started grilling her because she has a career and her husband's got a career. I started grilling her about daycare. I said, where are you sending her? What are you going to? And she finally looked at me and she goes, Dad, if you want to take care of her, I'll be more than happy to let you watch her. And I said, no, I can't. I don't want to be a babysitter. But then I said, I'll do it 1 day a week. And then her mother-in-law, who lives here in Oxford, my son-in-law's mom and dad, they live here in Oxford. She agreed to do it 1 day a week. So for 2 days a week, she was with family, and then the other 3 she was at daycare. But I set the ground rules down. I said, if I take her and watch her on Tuesday, she spends the night with me Monday night, because I'm not getting up at 5 o'clock in the morning to come and get her. She can spend the night, and then I'll bring her to you at the end of the day. And that worked out. And Kenzie, with that house, the previous home, and with this house, she looks at it as a second home, because she comes here, she's got her own bedroom and all this sort of thing. This is just another one of her homes that she's got access to.
And she has Grandpa wrapped
around
around
she
her
does.
finger.
Yeah, she does. I have a 2010 GT Mustang sitting in the garage, and I told my daughters, 11 years ago, I said, the first grandson gets the Mustang, because I only drive it in the summer during nice days, and they both objected. They said, well, what if you have a granddaughter first? And I said, no, it's got to be the grandson, So I had a granddaughter first, Kenzie, and after a while I said, all right, Kenzie, you get the car. Yep. So I take a picture of her in the car every year as she's getting older.
Excellent. That's
so I keep it for her. But now I have a grandson, and I'm getting pressured that I have to provide a car for a grandson, and I said, no. My wife's even applying the pressure, so I don't know where that's going to go.
I wouldn't even guess to look ahead for you.
No, he's only 18 months old, so I got a while yet.
Got it. Well, we're going to take a little break. We'll get back to you in a moment, but stay tuned.
All right, crew, let's get started. Sure.
Don't ignore the law. You must call 811 at least 2 to 3 days before any digging project so you can avoid hitting our essential buried utilities. For digging projects big or small, make the call to 811.
Just think, what if we didn't have local TV and radio? Where would I go for local sports, local politics, a mayor, city council, stuff that affects me every day? How about health? Who's covering things that endanger my family? I need to know now, as it happens, from sources I trust, people in my community. No agenda, no bias like you find on cable and social media. Just facts. For news I can trust, I stay local. Support your local station. Text TV to 52886 today.
So when you and your bride were growing through being adults and being parents and stuff like that, have you done any traveling? Have you seen the world, and have you enjoyed that?
We've taken the girls on. We took the girls on a cruise when they were young. We took them to Disney World a couple of times. I found it traumatic to deal with the bill at the end of the week every time we went to Disney World.
Wow.
So, but I still love going there. My wife and I spent our honeymoon at Disney World.
Did you?
Yeah, it was just opened when we went there. It was.
Oh, sure.
Yeah, we enjoyed it. But during when the kids were still, I don't think they were in college yet. We went to Ireland with a group of friends, but the kids were old enough to take care of themselves. Like I said, we took the kids on a cruise, and then growing up with the kids, we took them to. My wife's got family throughout the country, so we've taken them to Texas to visit family. We've taken them to Colorado to visit family. We've taken them to California to visit family. Mm-hmm. So we've been able to do that, a lot of domestic trips.
There's a lot to see in this country, isn't there?
Yeah, and there's a lot to see in the state. My wife and I we're going to commit to each other, and hopefully next year to take a drive around the state, and hopefully spend most of next summer going through the state of Michigan.
Well, if you do, I'll sit down with you. I'll buy you lunch and hear your stories, because there's so much to see.
Yeah, I'm sure there is, and we haven't seen enough of it.
Yep. You like sports. You did some baseball here and there, and I understand you still do. Talk to me about sports. What sports do you enjoy, and why? And maybe more important for this, what does sports teach you? What have playing sports taught you about life?
Well, I think the one thing sports has taught me about life is the importance of teamwork and depending on your teammates, such as I depend on my wife and she depends on me. At this point in our lives, now we depend on our kids and our kids depend on us, full circle. But I wanted to play baseball from the time I was 9. My dad was not athletically inclined at all. One of the kids in the neighborhood showed me how to play baseball, taught me the game. I actually was pretty good. I was one of the top players in our Little League on the east side of Detroit, which was a very substantial league. I actually got a scholarship offer to go to high school and to play for one of the Catholic high schools. But it was my mom's position was too far away and I wasn't going. So I loved playing baseball. I tried playing hockey as a kid. We had a rink down the street, but hockey is expensive.
Yes.
Very expensive. And
ice time and
yeah, I had skates and all that. I could skate, not very well, but I could skate. They always stuck me in goal because I couldn't skate as well as them, so I got stuck in goal. I didn't like playing goal. Those pucks were flying at me all the time.
You're a target.
Yeah, I was a target. But I love hockey. I love the sport. My wife and I were season ticket holders for the Red Wings for a period of time. Our youngest daughter worked for the Red Wings for a while.
Oh, really?
But as much as I lived, eat, and breathed baseball as a kid all the way through college, I'm not a big fan of the game anymore.
Okay.
Baseball. I love playing softball, but baseball has gotten so difficult to watch.
Why is that?
Well, when I was a kid, I proved it to my daughter. I showed her a video of the '68 World Series game of the Tigers and the Cardinals, and the game lasted 2 hours and I think 25 minutes. And the same pitchers that started the game finished the game. And I know they're changing the rules and they're trying to, but a game is going well over 3 hours, and I just can't stand it. These guys take, between pitches, they're spending 20 minutes adjusting everything, and I said, I can't watch this. This is boring. But I still love hockey. I like football, love football actually. I'm just so frustrated as a Lions fan I can't watch them anymore because it's 60 years for me plus same old Lions.
We do share that.
Yeah, I've been more of a Michigan fan than Michigan State. My oldest went to Michigan. My youngest went to Michigan State. So I have this conflict between the two of them, because they don't care. Andrea wants to see Michigan pummel Michigan State, and Christina wants to see Michigan State destroy Michigan. So I'm more of a Michigan fan than I am a Michigan State, but I will root for both teams no matter who they're playing, unless they're playing each other. Then I'll root for the team that has a better chance of going further. You know, if Michigan is 6-6 going against an undefeated Michigan State team, I'm going to root for Michigan State.
Yep.
But if everything is equal, then I'm more of a Michigan fan. But I love football, like I said, and hockey. And I play softball still because I enjoy playing the game. I just don't enjoy watching Major League game.
Sure.
I enjoy the girls' softball at
Yeah.
the college level. I always watch the College World Series for the
They're
girls.
serious athletes.
Oh, yes, and it's a great game to watch. It's exciting and it's fun, and I enjoy watching it.
And fast pitch,
Fast pitch, yes.
what those young ladies can do to a softball is stunning.
I know I had a hard time
Wow.
adapting to working with my oldest to play softball because I wanted a son. You know, I wanted a son to groom, to do what I did, you know, do the right thing, to do what I didn't do. And I had 2 daughters, and my oldest got involved in softball, and my wife said, "You got to teach her." I said, "She's a girl." I don't, well, but I evolved, and she did very well. She played on the team.
Apparently, you're a pretty good teacher.
Well, I got a grandson now who's 18 months old. He was born in Norway, but he's an American citizen. And so my daughter gave him, she wanted a Norwegian name for him.
Mm-hmm.
And I came up with Gustav, and she said she liked it, but they called him Finn. And I said, Finn's not going to work. She goes, for what? I said, I'm going to groom him to be a major league catcher, and Finn is not a name for a major league catcher. So Gustav, I could call him Gus.
Gus.
Gus works
Gus
perfectly.
is a good catcher.
Oh, yes.
Hey,
Oh, absolutely.
Gus.
Plus, my daughter would not take her husband's name when she got married.
Okay.
Another thing that we
Right.
differ on.
Yep.
So she hyphenates her name. It's Hunwick Brum. So my grandson's name is Hunwick Brum, Finn Hunwick Brum. And I said, no, it's going to be Gus Brum. I said, if he ends up becoming a hot shot ball player, he's Gus Brum. And, you know, my son-in-law was going, I can live with that. I said, it's Gus Brum. So my daughter says, we'll see how it goes.
We'll see how it goes. And it's going well so far.
Well, he's 18 months, but he's got a pretty good arm. He seems like he's a little plastic ball pretty well.
Does he really? There's hope for everybody.
Oh, yeah.
Do you have a manager yet picked out or no?
Not quite.
Excellent. Good. All right. What we're going to do, we're going to stop for a minute, take a little break. We'll come back and we'll talk a little bit about what you've been doing a little more recently, what your life has been, and your involvement in Oxford. We're kind of partial toward this town, and you played several roles here. We'd like to hear more about that, okay?
Okay.
Don't go away. Stay with us.
My biggest fear in the middle of my addiction was that I would never be able to get over it and that my kids wouldn't have a father.
Crippling depression, anxiety, exhaustion.
I was in prison and her mom had a heart attack.
There's a lot of institutional issues and challenges that suggest to us that dads aren't essential, and I've always rejected that.
Sometimes you don't have to know everything about being a dad. You just gotta be there.
Okay, well, thanks for staying tuned. Thanks for staying tuned.
Yep.
Love your deck, by the way.
Oh, thank you.
This is a nice place to be, especially with the rain. You've been involved in Oxford for quite a while, 30-some years living out here. But you mentioned to me earlier that maybe 10 or 15 years ago, you decided you might want to get involved in politics in leadership and stuff like that. Tell us a little bit about how that got started, and tell us a little bit about what that's led to more recently.
Well, I don't know if I want to say that I wanted to get involved in politics per se, because I never really thought of myself as a politician.
Right.
But, you know, I've always been a leader in the my business career. I've always had leadership roles and such, and being the firstborn of 5 kids, you know, it seemed that it's a natural evolvement. But when I was decided, you know, I was retiring early, my wife had commented, you know, you could run for township treasurer and get your name out there, and then, because I didn't really want to win the election, I just wanted to get some notoriety and get some, get people to know who I was. And my goal was to, if I ran for the position of treasurer, and I don't want to win that election, but I want to get my name out there, that the leadership would bring me in to help out doing, you know, in some role. And so right after the election, I got a phone call and asked if I'd be interested in being on the Zoning Board of Appeals.
Okay.
And I jumped at that.
With the township.
With the Oxford Township.
Yep.
And I was doing that for probably close to 2 years when I was asked if I wanted to become part of the Planning Commission. And I jumped at that. And then there was a void on the Downtown Development Authority board, and they were having a tough time filling it. They preferred to get the business owners in there, and so I was asked if I wanted to represent the township on the DDA board.
DDA.
And I thought, okay, sure. And I got on the board, and then I ended up becoming the treasurer. And the expectation for me, I was only going to be on the DDA board for maybe 2 or 3 years, but I was on the DDA board, I think, for 8 years. And what my goal was to get on the DDA board was, my problem was there was a disconnect between the township and the village. There was this kind of a divide. And I always ask people that I came in contact with on a day-to-day basis, I said, when people ask you where you're from, do you tell them you're from the village of Oxford, or do you tell them you're from Oxford? And they said, well, I'm from Oxford. So when you live in the township, you don't tell people, I'm from the township of Oxford, or I live in Oxford Township. You just say Oxford. And either you live in the village or you live in the township, you say Oxford. So why can't we operate as a unified group here? Even though we are 2 different entities, we can still be unified in how we approach things. You know, I was very disappointed when the police department was disbanded. I understand why it was, but it was disappointing to me that it was disbanded. I wanted to hope that maybe they could come up with a way to put together a police commission between the 2 communities, and then maintain the police department, have a police commission run the police department. But I understand why things were done, why they were done, and it's worked out well, but I still think as a community we might be better off with our own police department, but that's just the way I feel. But being on the DDA board gave me a lot of insight to how things work in the downtown area, how the businesses, you know, want support from the village and from the community to help support their businesses, and I get that, and I became more aware how important it was to support those businesses, not only for their survival, but for the survival of the community itself. And I enjoyed my time on the DDA board, you know, but I'm still a member of the Planning Commission, and my objective or role on the Planning Commission is that I want to see Oxford maintain itself as a bedroom community with a lot of open space and space.
There is some space here.
I came out here to get away from everybody, you know, and I think when I moved out here, I think the township's population was about 8,000 people. Now we're over around 22,000. And I'm sitting there thinking, well, that's good enough, you know, but I'm only one voice on the Planning Commission, and I, you know, I put forth what, my voice, and I get to have a little bit of say, but I'm on the ordinance review committee with the planning commission, so I get to at least have some input in how ordinances are written and how they're developed and so forth. But I don't want to see a lot of growth and development occur here, because I just think it takes away from what we are. But I'm only one voice, and we'll see how things evolve.
If I made two questions then. One, for the folks who watch this show, what is the public what do people who are not involved in the planning commission or the township leadership and the other areas that you've talked about, what do people need to know about why folks want to participate in those things? You've got a pretty good track record of getting involved in things where you're serving the community. Why would you want to do that? And why might they want to consider, well, maybe there's something I can do to help our town as well?
Well, I think what it would be important for them to know is that at any one time, a development could occur close to them, or a change could be implemented in a zoning that they're in that could spark a development that they're not going to be happy with.
Yeah.
And they would need to understand how that works and why you wouldn't want this to happen, or why you don't want these zoning changes to occur, and why you want the zoning changes that are in place to remain in place, or maybe you want them to be expanded to the previous zoning where they were suburban farm or they're agricultural. It's going to be important to them when it affects them.
So then, if that's true, what would you say to them about, how would you recommend that they proceed, knowing that? What do you think that they ought to do?
Well, they need to participate in the Open Meetings Act. Go to the meetings.
Go to the meetings.
If there's a planning commission meeting pertaining to an issue that's in their neighborhood, or indirectly or directly involves them, they need to go to the meetings. Public input does have influence on how some decisions are made. I've experienced that a few times while on the planning commission. If you get enough input from the public, then it will sway a decision.
Got it.
And they need to understand that that it's important for them to attend those meetings if it directly or indirectly involves them.
Got it. Then the message I hear is that those of you who are watching, and those of us who are sitting, if we aren't involved, we're missing an opportunity to maybe influence the direction of of the decisions that are made locally here, which is pretty important.
Oh, absolutely it is. And the community needs, if the community will develop based on how individuals such as myself, being on the planning commission, plan for the future. And you want your input on those plans if you're going to be here for a while.
Or we can just blame you that it all turned out wrong.
Well, yeah, you
it's your
blame me,
fault.
but then after I'm dead and gone, there's nobody left to blame. Then you got to try to fix it,
Exactly.
But you want to have input, so a person like me isn't solely making the decision, or along with other commissioners. We have input from the public.
Excellent. All right. Well, that's a point I wanted to get to, that it's up to us to be involved. And you become involved in a number of ways, and it's something you enjoy and do well, but it's up to us to be involved. So I want to thank you for the time. We're kind of running out of it, but I want to thank you for your time with us, your time with Oxford TV, the leadership there. And we're going to ask that you all follow his advice and get involved more in your community. It couldn't hurt, and it might help. Is that fair?
Absolutely.
All right. Thank you, my friend.
Oh, thank you.
Good to meet. Good to talk. Thanks again.
Thank you.
Until next time, this is Chuck Cameron saying it's his life on my life, and we hope you enjoyed this program. We'll see you next time.